From the Gulf States newsroom, this is the Gulf States Gumbo, your weekly serving of stories from Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. I'm community engagement producer Nellie Beckett, chopping it up this week. Federal grants have helped bring down opioid overdose deaths by making it easier to access life-saving overdose reversal drugs like Narcan. That's through the CDC's Overdose Data to Action program, also known as OD2A. But now, the Trump administration is delaying that program's funding. Those federal grants have made a big difference in states with fewer resources, like Alabama. Public health reporter Drew Hawkins went to the streets of Birmingham to hear about what might happen without them.
Crystal and a few of her friends living on the street are behind a church in Birmingham, Alabama. She asked that we not use her last name because of stigma associated with people who use drugs. She has a few wounds from injecting drugs. One on her hand is badly infected.
Do you know what's going on with it?
Yeah, I missed a shot of the ice and bent in it.
Crystal's getting harm reduction supplies and bandages, as well as overdose reversal drugs like Narcan, paid for with federal grants. She says she overdosed recently and nearly died. The Narcan saved her life. Suzanne Smith, the harm reduction worker giving out supplies, says she's seen the difference the overdose reversal drug has made.
I have seen it really, really bad where some people that I really, really cared about lost their lives, and it's like I'm seeing that less and less, and it's encouraging to me. It really, really is. I mean, we're definitely making a difference.
But the federal funding that helps pay for this Narcan is stalled. CDC staffers told NPR the Trump administration may cancel roughly $140 million in these types of grants. Then administration officials issued a statement saying the funds would be dispersed in increments. But even that might make it harder for Alabama to keep distributing Narcan.
Any reduction in funding, I think it's ultimately going to affect the amount we can get out.
Nicole Walden is Associate Commissioner of the Alabama Department of Mental Health, which also uses the federal grants to help distribute Narcan. She says the department would have to pull money from other sources if they wanted to keep that program going.
I do think any reduction in funding would hurt, but I think there are ways that we can minimize that hurt.
Local health departments may not have other sources of funding they can pull from.
We know we're about to go back into a storm that may not have any end in sight.
Dr. David Hicks is the health officer for Jefferson County, where Birmingham is located. They get more than $1 million from the CDC for things like Narcan distribution. He says the funding is irreplaceable, and it's been working. They've seen fewer people dying from overdoses.
And we're on pace this year to have sustained drops in overdose deaths. And that would not happen if it wasn't for the funding.
Hicks hasn't heard anything about the status of the funding from the CDC, but he says it's a familiar pattern. They hear about funding cuts in the news, don't get any updates from officials, and then receive a notice terminating the funding. He says that's how it was for 2 other grants they lost this year because of DOGE cuts.
So it certainly could happen that we don't hear something directly until the decision has already been made, and then we have to then quickly halt grant-related activities.
With that funding, Jefferson County has been able to give out free Narcan, making it easy for anyone to get. They refurbished old newspaper stands around Birmingham, converting them into basically Narcan vending machines. Hicks says they won't be able to continue these programs without the funding that made them possible.
The issue is if we lose the resources we need to combat this, I fear that we're going to go back the opposite direction. We're going to lose more people to premature deaths due to overdosing.
Last year, opioid overdose deaths were down nationally, and part of that is due to more widespread distribution of things like Narcan. But recent data suggests the overdose death rate may be rising again, and they could continue to rise without medication to reverse overdoses. For the Gulf States Newsroom, I'm Drew Hawkins.
You're listening to the Gulf States Gumbo. I'm Nellie Beckett. You just heard how federal grants are a vital resource for the opioid epidemic in states like Alabama, and how delays to that funding could lead to more people dying. To unpack his reporting, I'm joined by public health reporter Drew Hawkins. Hi, Drew.
Hey, Nellie.
And NPR's national addiction correspondent, Brian Mann, who actually broke this story, is here to talk to us too. Hi, Brian. Thanks for being here.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Brian, I'd like to start with you. You broke the story after CDC staffers alerted you about the funding potentially being cut off. Can you talk about what you're hearing inside the CDC and what we know about what will happen with the funding since your story came out?
Yeah, I think a lot of the people who help administer this program around the country are really worried. They have described, and public health officials have described, how OD2A really connected people around the country with vital harm reduction services, vital healthcare services. What's happened now is that the allotment of money, about $290 million that Congress set aside for this, the Trump administration is holding back about half of that, about $140 million. What they say, what the White House tells me, is that they are going to eventually disperse this money, but it's going to come in dribs and drabs spread out over the months ahead, and they won't give any timeline for when that's going to happen, how much money is going to come in which chunks or when. Bluntly, that's freaking everybody out. Nobody really knows how to run these complicated health programs on that kind of basis. So CDC officials are worried internally, and many public health officials are telling me that this just doesn't seem to work. And so that's where we are as of this moment.
Yeah, and you've reported that recent data suggests overdose deaths may be going back up again. How could funding changes like this influence or contribute to that?
Yeah, basically, it's what people are describing as a very basic idea. We can't spend money that we don't have. And so all over the country, public health officials are saying we have staff in place, we have people doing frontline care for people in severe addiction, but we're going to have to lay those people off. We're going to have to shut down those storefronts where those services are being provided because we don't have the money in hand. So while it's in theory, the money is in the pipeline somewhere, it's not available now. People don't know when it will arrive. And so it's a cut in effect. And people are really scared that this could contribute to a resurgence of overdose deaths. This is a very fragile recovery still. And this new, slightly more robust safety net that's been helping people in addiction, people are describing a moment now when it could unravel very quickly.
And Drew, that uncertainty is something you've heard as well, right? Can you talk about what public health officials in the Gulf South are saying?
Yeah, definitely. Brian said unraveling. That's something that I'm hearing as well too. I think Alabama is maybe a really good example because, when I talked to the Department of Mental Health, they described being able to potentially pull money from other funding sources to keep those programs going. So whether that OD2A money goes away or it slows down or it's delayed, they're able to kind of shift things around, right? So they can really minimize any disruptions to it. But at the same time, Jefferson County, where Birmingham is, they also get what's called local OD2A grants. And, local health departments don't really have the ability or the luxury of pulling money from other sources. So, if they want to be able to kind of keep that going, they need that money to make it happen. And I'd really like to take a second to just drive home how effective local health officials say that the funding has been. In Jefferson County, they've seen a 42% decrease in overdose deaths compared to this time last year. And, Dr. David Hicks, the health officer at Jefferson County, he very plainly said that that would not be possible without this funding. And, they can't keep these programs going without the consistent funding that made them possible in the first place. So this idea of unraveling behind the uncertainty is definitely a widespread, sentiment.
Thanks, Drew. In addition to direct support for overdose reversal drugs, what else does this funding support and how do delays affect that?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's not just naloxone or Narcan, right? Another part of what OD2A supports is data, right? It allows people to basically track the opioid crisis, where people are dying, so that resources can be better allocated. We have a better snapshot and vision of what's happening on the ground. So losing that funding also means potentially losing that data. And that data is used for all sorts of things, whether that's public health interventions or research, right? So, looking at it in our region, I talked to Andrew Yaki, who is a psychiatric epidemiologist who focuses on substance use. He's at Ole Miss, and here's how he put it.
We can't do our research. And, for me, it's also about saving lives. It's about person-centered approaches. And so, again, when this happens, people are going to die.
The stakes are really high behind this funding, and you can hear it in the way Andrew Yockey says it.
Drew Hawkins is our public health reporter, and Brian Mann is NPR's national addiction correspondent. Drew, Brian, thanks for talking with us about this.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Nellie.
You may have heard that Congress cut the funding to public media last week, and a lot of people are asking us what that actually means. So I've brought in the Gulf States Newsroom's Director of Development, Marcy Schramm, to talk about how this affects our newsroom and our work. Marcy, thanks for joining me.
Good morning, Nellie. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so here's what we know. Congress has voted to claw back funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which funds public media like us, the Gulf States Newsroom. Please give us an overview of our organization.
Sure. The Gulf States Newsroom was founded in 2020 as part of NPR's Collaborative Journalism Network. Newsrooms like ours exist across the country. There's the Midwest Newsroom, Appalachia, the Texas Newsroom, the New England News Collaborative, and a whole bunch more. Our hub is the Gulf States Newsroom. We serve Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi, and a lot of our work is heard across the country in NPR. And in just the few years that we've been doing this, our work has won awards regionally and nationally. Our reporting helped change policy even. And every day we work so hard to improve the places we live and to create positive change.
So I guess what I would ask is, how do the federal funding cuts impact us?
Well, Congress canceling funding is definitely impacting our newsroom. It also is impacting member stations across the country and NPR. We were all founded to do public service journalism and to serve our communities. The direct impact to the Gulf States Newsroom is the loss of 30% of our budget. We run on a really lean budget. Almost every single dollar supports the salaries of our team, their equipment, and the travel across 3 states. My job is to raise funds and keep us going for years to come. And we do have support from some incredible national foundations and from individual donors, but we certainly need to grow that base of support.
And if anybody listening wants to help support our work, what can they do?
Well, thank you for asking that question, the $1 million question. To support us, people can go to npr.org to donate. And when you're in the donation screens, on the very last screen, you'll see a comment section. And in the comments, you can write, "My gift is for the Gulf States Newsroom." And 100% of those funds will come to us. Again, that's npr.org. And just type in the comment section that you want to support the Gulf States Newsroom. This is a tax-deductible contribution, and we are forever grateful for the support from our community and our listeners. If you want to reach out to me, I would welcome that. And you can email us at connect@gulfstatesnewsroom.org. And I would very much look forward to that conversation. And again, our email address is connect@gulfstatesnewsroom.org.
Marcy Schramm, our Director of Development, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Nellie. It's such a pleasure always to talk with you.
This week's show is cooked up by the Gulf States Newsroom team. Our theme music is by DJ Supreme. Special thanks to our partner stations, WBHM, Mississippi Public Broadcasting, WWNO, and WRKF. You can find us in your podcast feeds every Friday. Look us up and be sure to subscribe. Again, I'm your host, Nellie Beckett. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to stir your roux.